Well, good morning, Epikos. How are we doing today? Good, that's great to hear. My name is Jacob Machelski. I'm the discipleship pastor here at Epikos Church, and I'm very excited to open up the scriptures with you here today in our Closer Look series. In this sermon series, we're just highlighting some passages of scripture that are some of your personal favorites. We did a survey with the church earlier this year and found some of your favorite verses, so we've been going through them this summer, and this brings us back to the Psalms again this week. So let's grab our Bibles, and we're going to be turning to Psalm chapter 46. We're going to be in Psalm chapter 46. And if I must say, I can see why this particular psalm, this passage here today, this verse, is a favorite one of yours for sure. The verse we're going to be looking at is Psalm 46, verse 10. It's a very popular one, and this is how it goes. Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. I love that opening line, don't you? Be still. I don't know about you, but that line really resonates deeply with my soul, especially in this day and age when we live in constant busyness and noise and distraction. The psalmist is calling us to be still. An issue is that we're just looking at the last verse of this psalm, aren't we? We're jumping right to the end and looking at this last verse, and it's a great verse. But we need to really unearth the deeper meaning of this verse, don't we? We need to go back and see how the psalmist got to this point where he can say, be still. So let's go back to the very beginning of the psalm and see how these previous 9 verses inform our understanding of how we can truly be still and know God. So before we continue, I just need to acknowledge, we're going to be opening up the part of the Bible that's called the Psalms today. And the Psalms are basically a set of poetry, 150 hymns that a lot of Israel would put to music. And these poems, they read differently than narrative or just information literature, don't they? Like poems use these words that paint images in our mind. And these images the author uses to invoke feelings in our heart and feelings in our soul. And so many of times we see that these would have been put to music, and they would have been the songs, the songs, the hymnal of Israel at this time. Much like Pastor Mark talked about last week when he was talking about the Israelites had this playlist of the Psalms of Ascent as they went to Israel for their annual feasts and pilgrimages. The Psalms were the Israelites' hymn book. And we're going to see how these poems just ignite feelings and emotions within us. So let's start with this first verse together. Psalm 46, verse 1. And we're going to pay attention to the images that the author is using, and then also pay attention to your own emotions and the feelings as we read these first 3 verses together. Psalm 46, starting in verse 1. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore, we will not fear, though the earth gives way, though the mountains be moved into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, though the mountains tremble at its swelling. Selah. Now, a quick word on Selah. It's not just a 90s Christian band. Any Selah fans out there? Any Selah fans? It's not just a 90s Christian band, though I did definitely listen to some Selah as I was preparing the sermon, but these poems that make up the Psalms would have been, as I said earlier, put to music. And the translators really disagree what the word Selah would mean in our modern context, how we would understand it in English. And an indication sometimes, some of the translators think it's an indication for the singer to raise their voice to a higher pitch. Some think it's an indication for the singer to change their voice entirely for the next section of the song. But most believe that the Selah there in Psalm is a marker for the singer to pause and to allow the instrumental music to continue behind them. Kind of like a musical interlude that we know in modern music. But the word Selah here is present 3 times in our psalm, here in verse 3, 7, and 11. And these Selahs are present where a section of the psalm finishes and then a new one will begin right after it. And so we can see the structure of this song and many songs in this book of Psalms as they use these words, Selah, to break it down. And these Selahs in our song break the song into sections, and what it's inviting us to do is to pause for that section and to meditate on what we've just read, meditate on the words. So let's go back to that first line. The very first line gives us a huge clue as to what this psalm is all about. It says, God is our refuge and our strength. The author of this song wants us to see God as a refuge, as this place of protection. Protection from what, right? Well, what's it say in verse 2? From the earth giving way, from the mountains being moved into the heart of the sea, from water roaring and foaming and mountains trembling. Like, what emotions do these images stir up in you, right? How do these images being painted for us, how do they make you feel? I don't know about you, but these ideas mentioned, they're terrifying, right? They're terrifying. Though we're reading this in picturesque languages, these cataclysmic events are very real in our world. These concepts are like a mashup of all the post-apocalyptic movies involving every natural disaster of earthquakes, oceanic storms, volcanoes, mountains falling into the seas. Come on. My wife and I, we recently just went and saw the movie Twisters. That's what I'm thinking of, right? We saw the movie Twisters. It's a great summer flick. I have to say, special effects have come a long way since the early 90s, but in the theater, you feel like you're in one of these cataclysmic events, and it's actually terrifying. And these are the types of natural events that the psalmist is bringing to our mind. These things actually happen on a very regular basis in our world. Hurricanes, tornadoes, monsoons, earthquakes. Now we don't face a lot of these types of events in Milwaukee. We have Midwestern, we're a little bit isolated from some of these things, but we do face things like severe storms taking down trees in our yard and blowing bricks off of our buildings, or shutting the power down, snowstorms that shut down our city and knock out power for hours. Whenever we're in these moments, right, we realize just how little control we have, don't we? I can't yell at the storm to stop and expect it to stop, right? We realize just how little control we have. Now let's take a moment to just think about our daily life for a minute and realize how little control we have. I mean, we think we have control over our lives, but just think about how crazy the world we live in is. Like, think of the earth. I Googled some facts about the earth this week. It was fun. But we live on this huge rock in space called the earth. I'm going to put a weight for you. The weight of the earth is 13 septillion pounds. Like, I can't even fathom that number. That's a lot of zeros, right? 13 septillion pounds. I can't comprehend that. This rock is somehow floating in space, but it's not just stationary. This 13 septillion pound space rock is spinning around 1,000 miles an hour, and somehow we're not flying off into the sky. And if that wasn't crazy enough, this giant spinning rock we call home is flying 67,000 miles around a flaming giant ball of gas we call the sun. And it's just another Sunday, right? I mean, that's the world we live on. It's a crazy place. It's a crazy world. And it's not my intention to create fear in you. I mean, the psalmist is telling us that we will not fear, but the psalmist is trying to show us we live in a world full of danger that's out of our control. We have to place a lot of trust that we are safe in this world of danger, in this world of chaos. These things are part of the natural chaos of this world that God tamed at the beginning of creation. But the chaos is still around us, and we're powerless to stop it. Every once in a while, it rears its ugly head into our lives, and these natural dangers are not the only things we face in our world. As we see in this psalm, if you thought that those things were bad enough, don't look further down. In Psalm 46, verse 8, it says, "Come behold the works of the Lord, how he has brought desolations on the earth." Verse 9, he makes wars cease to the end of the earth. He breaks the bow and shatters the spear. He burns the chariots with fire. Not only do we face natural disasters, but God has to intervene in the world for things like wars and chariots and those kind of things. We have our fellow humanity to worry about in our lives. Nations raging against nations. Countries playing power games while innocent civilians get caught in the crossfire. We live in a world in which humans commit unspeakable acts of violence towards each other. And this is happening all around us, and we cannot control what others do. These are the dangers that we face each and every day in the world. Natural and personal dangers. And amidst all this chaos all around us in the world, what does our psalmist say? Verse 2, we will not fear. How can that be possible? Let us just think about the structure of this psalm for a little bit. You see, we have this idea of the dangers of this world, the natural disasters right at the beginning, right? Verses 1 through 3, these natural disasters and dangers in the world. And then we have those verses we just looked at, 8 and 9. We have the dangers of human depravity to worry about. But we skip these verses in the middle, right? Well, what's nestled right here in the middle? We live surrounded by darkness and chaos and threat all around us, but nestled right in the middle of our song, it's protection. It's protection from the chaos. Look with me at verse 4. There is a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy habitation of the Most High. God is in the midst of her. She will not be moved. God will help her when morning dawns. The nations rage, the kingdoms totter, but he utters his voice and the earth melts. The Lord, Yahweh of hosts, is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. Selah. The psalmist is painting another beautiful picture for us through his words. Amidst the chaos, there's a river. It's not roaring and raging and foaming like the sea described earlier, is it? No, it's a beautiful, peaceful river that's making glad the city of God. It's sustaining the city of God. And in the midst of this psalm is also a glorious city described, right? It's called a holy habitation here in our translation in the ESV. Now, this word is translated as habitation. It's a common word in Hebrew called mishkan, which actually means just a home or a dwelling place. It's like a holy home for God to dwell in. God is making his home. Most commonly, it would have been a tent in that day and age. He is like setting up camp with his people here in the midst. And he's just making his home with them. God is making his home with his people. But this humble home is also described as a city of God in our verses. This home or dwelling of God is described as a glorious city. A city in ancient time would have been a refuge of safety. In those days, most cities would have had walls around it for protection. Here's a picture for you on the screen. This isn't a perfect example of what the original author would have in mind, but these are the walls of Dubrovnik, Croatia, the longest intact medieval walls that still exist in the world. And you look at that and you feel like, wow, that's protection. And that's what would have been keying into ancient readers of this psalm. A city is a place of protection. Those who lived in and around a city would gather within its walls or a fortress to protect themselves from enemies. And they would see that they would have this refuge within the walls. But you notice in our psalm, there's no mention of walls, is there? I think the idea of city and walls would have been kind of assumed, but it doesn't mention and talk about how the walls are there for protection, right? What does it mention instead? It says who? God is dwelling there. Because God dwells there, it's safe within this city. Look at verse 5. God is in the midst of her. She shall not be moved. God will help her when morning dawns. God will help her when morning dawns. I don't know about you, but I need all the help I can get in the morning when I first wake up, right? But do you see the picture here that the psalmist is painting is that God is in the midst of the city. God is providing protection. And though I'm asleep at night, God is wide awake. He's keeping watch and protecting. He's watching. He's protecting. He's waiting. And when the morning dawns, I am safe because of God. Now, how does this city function here in our psalm? This glorious city is in the midst of the darkness all around. This beautiful city in the center of our psalm, though this city is surrounded by chaos, it offers protection. Look at verses 6 with me, verses 6 and 7. The nations rage, the kingdoms totter, he utters his voice, the earth melts. The Lord of hosts is with us, and the God of Jacob is our fortress. Selah. This is the main idea of this psalm we need to grasp today. The city of God is a fortress of protection amidst the dangers of this world. I'll put that for you on your screen so you can jot that down if you want to. The city of God is a fortress of protection in the midst of the dangers of this world. God is our source of protection, and He is the one that we look for when we face the dangers of life. From the biggest natural disaster to the slightest rain shower, from the largest international conflict to the smallest argument. God is our fortress in the midst of the struggle. Did you notice how it says, in the midst? He is with us. God doesn't remove Himself or remove His people from the darkness, from the chaos, but God instead comes and dwells there to protect us within the chaos, within the trouble. God's in the midst of the trouble, remaining alert and offering His protection. That main idea again, the city of God is a fortress of protection in the midst of the dangers of this world. The city of God is a fortress of protection. This is what the psalmist wants us to know in our minds as we read, and they would have sung this song. And what are we supposed to do with this information? Well, this brings us to the conclusion of the psalm, the verses that we started out with here today, our focus for today. Psalm 46:10. Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. Selah. With that head knowledge of God being our fortress in the world of danger, this verse beckons us to these actions. Be still and know that I am God. Now, these things, they're very easy to just say. They're very easy to just read on these pages, and I think we need to spend some time deeply internalizing these action steps in our lives and think through how do we live into them, being still and knowing God. Let's take them each in turn. I want to start with the second idea of knowing that I am God. Knowing God is the first thing I want us to explore today. At its base level, knowing God is just acknowledging Him in His existence, right? And I think our foundation of our faith starts with this idea, this mental acknowledgement of God as the creator of this world and the one that we are called to trust. Yes, that's important. But intellectual knowing God, that's just one part of it. That's one piece. But is that really what this verse is truly getting at? Yes, knowing God intellectually is important, but this psalm is encouraging us to not just know that God is out there, He exists, right? But He's encouraging us into a deeper relationship, right? He's calling us in this psalm to truly know that no danger we face in this world, that nothing we encounter can separate us from God. No matter what, God is there. He's protecting us. No matter what we face on the earth, we are safe and secure in the love of God. That's a deeper knowledge of God, isn't it? It's not just knowing He exists, but that's like putting your trust in Him, that He is your protector, that He is your refuge. And do you remember that glorious city described earlier in our passage? To the original readers of this psalm, they would have experienced this peace of being part of God's chosen people through the nation of Israel, who is the Old Testament of our Bibles. And being a part of this family would have been like being in a city of refuge. They were part of the people of God. And for those of us who were not born into this family of Israel, we have to ask, can we experience being part of this city? Can I be a part of this city of God and have this refuge as well? And that's the good news of Jesus. Jesus invites us into this city. He is God, made into human form, who dwelt in the chaos of this world. He dwelt in the darkness of this world, and He was a presence of light and life to all of those around us. And He, Jesus, experienced the protection of God in the midst of this chaos. Now, did that mean that Jesus never felt pain or suffering or hardship or hunger? No. Jesus still experienced all of those things, even to the point of dying on the cross. The protection of being in the city of God doesn't mean we never face chaos, that we never face the darkness around us. What it means is that God will carry us through it and even be with us through it, even if it means our death, because Jesus rose from the grave. And Jesus' resurrection proves that the greatest enemy, which is death, the thing that we all fear the most, cannot conquer us because we are in God, because we are in Jesus Christ, and we are in Him. To be a part of the city of God is being a part of the people of God. And when we turn from our natural ways of trusting ourselves and trusting the things of this world, and we place our faith and our trust in Jesus instead, we are granted citizenship into the city of God, the kingdom of heaven. And I know many of you here at Epikos have already taken this step of faith, that you are in this city of God. You are experiencing this eternal security in Him. But if you've not taken that step yet today, Jesus is inviting you into that kingdom today. He's inviting you to trust in Him and to become part of this city. You too can experience the joy of trusting Jesus, becoming like Him, and doing as He did in this world. And as a church, we would love to walk with you as you make this choice. So please, I'd want to encourage you, if you want to make that step today in your faith, make that choice today to trust Jesus. Let us know as a church. Let us know. There's a couple of ways that you can do that. One is just by filling out that Connect card we talked about earlier. On the back, there's a little box in the top right-hand corner. You can just check the box that says, that I want more information about following Jesus. Otherwise, on the bottom, there's a place for you to check that says, I commit my life to Jesus. And you could either just put this in the black collection boxes in the back on your way out, but I want to encourage you to take it a step further, to bring that Connect card saying that you trust in Jesus and bring it to your campus pastor today, or the service host that was giving the announcements earlier. Give that card to them and let them know that you're on this journey of faith and want to commit your life to Christ today. Even just find that campus pastor or that service host after service and talk to them. Don't leave here today without letting somebody know that you want to be a part of the people of God today. And I want to invite you to keep going on that journey, to explore your faith in community. Even if you aren't already trusting in Jesus yet or not ready to make that step of trust, we want to invite you into community. Find your campus pastor or your service host to learn how you can get plugged into community. Even though this is the last week of small groups, sign-ups for our fall season are going to be starting next month, and it's a good place to just wrestle with some of your questions that you might have with your faith and in your faith journey, to do those in community. So we have this idea of knowing God deeply at a relational level and trusting in Him. That's incredibly important. And I think it's the first step in our faith journey, but is that all there is? What does it mean to truly know God and to feel this deep in our bones? And that's why the psalmist calls us to a second action, isn't it? Be still. Being still and knowing God, they go hand in hand, don't they? It is this stillness, in this stillness that can really be the key to truly resting in God's safety and protection. Being still. Now, when I say the word stillness, what comes to mind? Stillness. What comes to your mind when I say that? When I think of stillness, I think of standing beside a calm lake whose surface is like glass and going for a relaxing, easy kayak ride. None of that Olympic kayaking, but a nice, relaxing kayak ride on a still lake. I think of early mornings with a cup of coffee in a comfy, cozy chair before anyone in my house wakes up with absolutely no agenda for the day and just being still. I think of seeing a child sleeping deeply and peacefully, feeling safe. I think of going for a walk around the block or through a park. I think of taking in the view from a mountaintop or a hike in a national park or even a city skyline. These times in our lives are rare moments, and we seldom get to experience them, but we really long for them, don't we? We long for these feelings of stillness and relaxation. And when I say stillness, I don't think of the common events that I do experience each and every day. Commuting in traffic to work, getting my kids ready for school or for the day and pleading with them to get ready for the 10th time. I don't think of inhaling Taco Bell before my next work meeting. I don't think of binge watching a TV show before bed, which keeps me up much later than I want to be. These are not the things I think about when I think of stillness, but I long for it so much. We so want stillness, and we very rarely ever find it in our lives, do we? This psalm is telling us that we actually need to be still in our lives. And this stillness draws us to God. If I'm honest with myself, I often get lost in the busyness of life. I get lost in the busyness of life, and I even forget God at times. I would venture to say that I'm not the only one in this room that struggles with this. Being still is so hard in a world that's full of noise, that's drawing us into constant movement. This is the call, but is this call of being still just telling us to be alone, to get alone, to be still? Very easy for some of us introverts in the room to just be alone. But is that all that this word, be still, is telling us to do? The English word here for still, in our translation, is the Hebrew word rapha. Rapha. In the Hebrew, this word means not just be still, but it means to let go, to stop. Yes, stillness, stopping is part of it, but it also means to release, to let go of what you're holding on to leave it alone or to let it go. Now that's a little bit different, isn't it? It's a little bit different than just being alone. What letting go means is I'm relinquishing control, right? That I am releasing control of something. We live in this restless culture that we live in, and it's really us trying to seize control of our lives, and many times that's where the struggle and the restlessness is coming from. But let's just think about this for a moment. If someone were to ask me how I was doing, the very first thing that would be out of my mouth probably is, I'm so busy. I'm so busy, Man, work, family, trips, hobbies, keeping up with what's going on in the world. I'm just busy. And then to take that a step further, we actually celebrate in our culture, we celebrate the idea of hustle, don't we? We celebrate those that are efficient in keeping up with everything that's going on, that are incredibly efficient, get stuff done. We celebrate those people. I mean, my YouTube algorithm is full of those people that are efficient getting stuff done, right? And this leads us to more people adding more and more things on the calendar, trying to do everything and feeling like we are wrung out dry because we're doing so much. Why do we do all these things? Why do we become so busy? And as I take a deep look at myself, I find that I have a control problem. We fill our lives with so many things, many of which are good things, okay? Don't get me wrong. It's because we want it all, right? We want to control outcomes. We want to do everything. We don't want to face the fear of missing out, do we? We want to curate unique and cool experiences in our lives, so we plan vacations and trips and always make plans for the weekend. If you ever tell somebody, if someone asks you, hey, do you have plans for the weekend? And you say no, they look at you weird. Like, what? You don't have plans for the weekend? We always try to make plans, don't we? We want our children to like us and to have all the opportunities in the world, so we sign them up for camps and extracurriculars and organize play dates and push them for good grades and accomplishments. We work ourselves to death so that we can make good impressions, so we can earn that promotion, so we can buy the next big thing, the house, the car, the boat, whatever. That will provide happiness. Or we want to save and build that 401k, and we want to retire early. And as I said, these are not evil things in our lives, but they are a few of the ways that we try to seize control of this chaotic world. What happens if things don't go according to our plan, right? What if we experience bad weather on our vacation? It's ruined. What if our son or daughter isn't athletic, or they are diagnosed with a learning disability? What if the stock market crashes? What if that promotion never comes? What if my company downsizes? What if my house gets smashed by a tree or a car or starts on fire or floods, right? How we respond when these things don't go according to plan reveals how much we are trying to take control of our lives through our circumstances. And where does this struggle for control leave us as a people? We're often described as one of the most anxious and fearful generations in history. Over 19%, 4 million Americans, just Americans alone, American adults struggle with some form of anxiety. And if we look to the next generation, we're actually leaving an imprint there as well. One survey found that in adolescents between 13 and 18, 31% are affected by anxiety disorders. This struggle for control leaves us forgetting God and leaves us in fear. We grow in fear of everything that is going on in the world around us because we have access to so much information, because we can know so much now. And it's because of that we often forget the truth that this psalm just told us about, right? that God's in control. God's our refuge. God's our protection. He's in control of everything in this world, and he offers protection for whatever we may face. Through Jesus, we have eternal security in him. Now, speaking personally, if I'm honest, I'm most anxious when I dwell on the things in the past or I worry about the future, and I try to seize control of that moment. It's during these times that I lose sight of what God is truly up to, and I forget to trust him fully in my life. I forget to let go, be still, to know that God is here and in control. And that's what this psalm is encouraging us to do. You know, we are often left here we're not actually left here without hope, right? This would be a terrible way to end a sermon today, but we can actually find stillness, church. We can find stillness amidst the noise, amidst the distraction, amidst the chaos. And I want to leave us here today with some ways that we can recapture our day, to draw our attention towards God. This truth, I don't think I have to make you believe it. You know it. Many of you do. What the psalm is declaring, that we are protected and secure in God. The problem is we just forget it all the time, and it leaves us in fear and anxiety. So to end our time today, I just want to invite you to consider a handful of spiritual practices. I have 3 of us for us here today that you can try this week to combat the noise of our culture that makes us want to take control of our lives. You may try one of them. You may try them all. Just do something. Do something to combat the noise and distraction that's all around us. Many helpful practices that combat anxiety are found in rest, in solitude, and in meditation. And these practices of rest allow us to draw our energy from God instead of drawing our energy from activities. So based on your stage of life, if you're single or you don't have children, solitude and rest may be easier to come by for you. But the next step for you then is to find ways of what being still truly means of letting go of control in your life and turning those times of solitude and rest into exercises of you growing in trust of God. And here are some practices that we can enter into this week. One practice that I've actually been trying for the last week or so is called fixed hour prayer. I'm following a group that called the Bible Project right now, and they're going through the Sermon on the Mount. And they've gotten to the Lord's Prayer in the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew chapter 6. And I was just blown away by how foundational this prayer was to Jesus in the early church, so that I started to try praying it to myself 3 times a day. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us of our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. For yours is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen. That prayer has a long history in church that has been really forgotten in more contemporary practices of Christianity. But the power of this practice of fixed hour prayer is that it'll interrupt your day. Set a reminder, set a schedule on your phone, and no matter what you're doing, when that notification comes up, pause and just pray that short, simple prayer. It'll take you 30 seconds, but it'll center you that God is in control. His kingdom's coming. His will is being done. He is providing daily bread in your daily needs. And we can use that to really remind us that God is in control. Another helpful practice that goes along with rest is Sabbath. Now, I have to be honest with you and confess that our Sabbath practice has really fallen away this summer. We've fallen into the trap of busyness in the summer, trying to do so many things that we haven't been as consistent with our Sabbath practice as a family. And it was really funny. My wife and I realized this when my daughter, Isla, she's 5, was peeking into my office and saw my Sabbath candle sitting on my desk, unlit, of course. And she said, well, why haven't we lit the Sabbath candle, in the last month or so? And oh man, oh goodness. Well, so my wife and I, Jenny, are trying to describe, we've just made plans on Saturdays. We've been really busy. We haven't just had time to stop and rest. And with the grace and mercy of a 5-year-old, she told us, well, this Saturday, we are not going to do anything. We are not going to plan anything. We are going to stop and rest, and we're going to have Sabbath morning pancakes, and we're going to make fuse beads, and we are going to have fun as a family. And so we accepted that prophetic word from our 5-year-old, and that Saturday we had a great Sabbath time of rest, and we needed that as a family. We needed to stop and just rest in the goodness of God. Taking a regular Sabbath is all about this idea of being still, letting go, resting in who God truly is. So if you'd like to know more about Sabbath, I have a couple of resources for you. You can check out the book, Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer to delve deeper into the topic. But as the slide on your screen shows, we as a church have Right Now Media at your disposal. So you can actually go to the hub.epikos.org right now and sign up for Right Now Media. You can stream a lot of these Christian resources in your home through their app or their TV apps, and you can actually watch some of these things. Ruthless Elimination of Hurry's on there for more about the Sabbath, and I actually made a playlist for you this week about finding stillness with a bunch of other solitude and Sabbath resources. So go to the hub.epikos.org and sign up for an account on Right Now Media and learn more about Sabbath and rest and how you can incorporate this into your life. And as we go to the final practice, I'm going to invite the worship team to come on up at this time. And in this final practice, I would like to just offer you is one that's called a breath prayer. A breath prayer. And on your screen, you're going to see some examples of breath prayers. I want to engage in this practice actually together as we close. So this is a practice that was recommended by my spiritual director when I was going through a time of incredible stress in my life, and I was very uncertain about my future. And he told me, pick 2 to 5 words, a short phrase that you can attach to your breath as a prayer. And anytime you feel anxious, you can pray this to yourself as you take some deep, deep breaths. So I chose the phrase, "In you I rest." Whenever I felt anxious, or even if I had difficulty sleeping, I would slow down and pray this prayer. As I inhale, I would think in my mind, "In you I rest. In you I rest." And it was a prayer attached to my breath that just calmed my anxiety, calmed my nervousness, and I found it was a great way to just rest and center myself back in God. So you see there on the screen, there's a couple of options. I want to encourage you to pick one or even pick a phrase for yourself. And we're going to take a couple seconds here, 30 seconds here at the end of service to just pray some of these breath prayers to ourselves. And you can do it silently in your head as you breathe. So there's going to be no music. It's just going to be silence and stillness. It will be awkward, but I hope it will be a time for us to really engage in stopping and letting go. So, are you ready to go? All right, close your eyes with me. Let's just take a couple of deep breaths together. A deep breath in and out. One more. In and out. Now, this time, breathe your breath prayer, and I'll pay attention to the time for us. Father, thank you for this moment of rest. Thank you for this moment of stillness. May we be reminded that you are God, who's in control of all things, and we can rest and find our refuge in you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.